What?
गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। ऑन पॉपुलर रिक्वेस्ट मैं ये पीक इनटू एवरीडे चाइना वापस शुरू कर रहा हूँ। What I'm going to do now in this is every week I'll come out with one where you in that past 1 week जो भी घटना घटी एक हफ्ते के अंदर I'll recount. And there's also a request कि इसके साथ हमें लिंक्स चाहिए। लिंक्स देने से कोई फायदा नहीं है, पर whatever slides I show are actually screenshots of the articles. So if you type those in, you will get the article, whichever source, right? So you will, if there's anything which you want to read in detail, which I've highlighted, you are welcome to go and see. And hereafter, ये हर हफ्ता आपको एक एपिसोड आएगा। और ये जो मेरा कोशिश यही होगा कि कुछ हिंदी में बात करूं और कुछ इंग्लिश में बात करूं, ताकि both kinds of listeners get a hang of it. Okay, let's go. The first news of the thing which happened last week is the meet between Putin and Xi Jinping that was widely reported, and this is from China military. And this source, what does he say? He says Xi Putin holds talk in Beijing, charting course for enhanced ties. And this is something which is important. ये सबको पता होना चाहिए कि we're going to see a new geopolitical context, right? Where America is on one side, China and Russia is very clearly now on the other side. Issue is what will happen to us. How do we navigate this issue? And how will our ties with Russia get impacted? Remember, historically, Russia has never sided India against China. In fact, even during the 62 war, it just stepped away. So, something which is developing, we'll have to keep track of it and see where it goes. And this is going to, this meeting is going to have एक लंबा असर पड़ेगा हमारे और रशिया के रिलेशंस के ऊपर। देखते हैं किस तरीके से उभर के आएगा, और शायद ये नया गवर्नमेंट आने के बाद हमें पता चलेगा किस तरह हवा चल रहा है। एंड ऑफ कोर्स दे हैव कंक्लूडेड अ लॉट ऑफ मिलिट्री डील्स, मिलिट्री अंडरस्टैंडिंग। सो चाइना एंड रशिया वेरी क्लियरली बता रहे हैं सबको कि भाई हम तो दोस्त होंगे, पक्का दोस्त होंगे, और हमारा फौजी संबंध भी शुरू हो जाएगा। उसके एनालिसिस करना पड़ेगा कि क्या क्या है। एट द आउटसेट बड़ा क्लियर है कि टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफर तो होगा ही। चाइना विल गिव देम स्पेयर्स ताकि वो अपना यूक्रेन में युद्ध लड़े, और रशिया विल could give technology to China so that it makes better weapon systems, and Russia could also train China ताकि वो अपना ताइवान वगैरह के अंदर जो भी करना चाहता है वो कर सकता है, राइट? इसके अलावा ट्रेड टाइज वगैरह के बारे में भी इन्होंने काफी ये किया है, बट दिस इज टू बी सीन। ओके, नेक्स्ट, दिस इज today's news where the Iranian President Raisi is no more. He's died in a helicopter crash in northern Iran. It's reported in China as in every other place. But the important thing here is इसके जाने के बाद ये रशिया, ईरान, चाइना का कोऑपरेशन, ये गठबंधन जो उभर के आ रहा था, वो कहाँ चलेगा, कैसे चलेगा? क्योंकि याद रखिए इसके साथ साथ इसका फॉरेन मिनिस्टर भी गया है, और लोग सोचेंगे कि क्या वाज दिस असैसिनेशन, कि किस तरीके से उसका एयरक्राफ्ट के साथ छेड़छाड़ किया गया है, राइट? ऑल दीज थिंग्स विल बी देयर। सो टू सम एक्सटेंट हम देखेंगे कि ईरान थोड़ा डिस्टेबलाइज होगा, और ये असर पड़ेगा रशिया, ईरान और चाइना के जो गठबंधन उभर के आ रहा था। ओके, नेक्स्ट ऑफ कोर्स The Pakistan foreign minister went and met the foreign minister of China, Wang Yi. इशाक दर इज द न्यू फॉरेन मिनिस्टर पाकिस्तान का. ये गए एंड ये जो रिपोर्ट आया है, ये रिपोर्ट आया है ग्लोबल टाइम्स में, राइट. और ग्लोबल टाइम्स बोलता क्या है? कहता है चाइना पाकिस्तान रिलेट आयन क्लैड रीइटरेट आयन क्लैड रिलेशनशिप, एग्री टू अपडेट बिल्डिंग ऑफ इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर. अब बात यह है कि ये जो सीपेक वो तकरीबन बंद हो गया. इट्स जस्ट लिंपिंग अलोंग बेयरली. So China, is trying to get its money back. It's not getting any geostrategic or geopolitical advantage. And Pakistan के पास पैसा नहीं है वापस देने के लिए. तो ये जाके वहाँ साष्टांग नमस्कार कर रहे हैं कि भैया हमें माफ कर दो, हमें लोन माफ कर दो, वगैरह वगैरह. And one is to see where this is going, and this is going to be interesting as things move ahead. Okay. And then of course आज ये इंटरेस्टिंग आर्टिकल आया है साउथ चाइना मॉर्निंग पोस्ट में अबाउट श्रीलंका इंडिया टाइज. नाउ चाइना इज फीलिंग क्या is India's influence in Sri Lanka going? You look at the headlines. Headlines देखिए. He says India sees a chance to make Sri Lanka a virtual province amid its rivalry with China. They're worried. Clearly, why are they worried? They're worried that जो Matala airport है, Rajpaksha airport, just next to Hambantota, now has been taken over by an Indian firm along with another Russian. It's an Indo-Russian joint venture which has taken over this airport, but more will be with India. So there's a counterweight at Hambantota, which I think is a very smart strategic move by India. And of course, we have helped them so much. We are building a new port, that's the Adani port, the Colombo East Terminal. So China is worried. So what will be the outcome? Outcome will be, something will happen. They'll do something. They'll engineer something, right? You have to tie this up. इसको देखिए कि मालदीव्स में क्या हो रहा है. मालदीव्स ने पहले तो बोल दिया ये करेंगे वो करेंगे, इंडिया आउट वगैरह वगैरह. पर अगर आप देखिए तो पिछले हफ्ता उनका फॉरेन मिनिस्टर आया, हमारा फॉरेन मिनिस्टर से मिला, लोन रीस्ट्रक्चरिंग की बात हो रही है, बहुत चीजों के बारे में बात हो रही है, और वो कुछ हाथ में लेके गया वापस, राइट. एंड इंडिया इज प्लेइंग दिस कार्ड वेरी स्मार्टली. सो वी गोना सी एंड वी गोना एग्जामिन, आई विल एग्जामिन ये जो चीज, ये जो इनको फीलिंग आया है श्रीलंका में, और जो मालदीव्स में लेटेस्ट जो हुआ है थोड़ा सा पॉजिटिव डेवलपमेंट, ये दोनों अगर मिलाएंगे तो आपको इट्स वेरी क्लियर कि वी आर पुलिंग थिंग्स बैक अ बिट. बट is Maldives completely back with us? No, not at all. It's far away. It's still with China, or it's still leaning towards China, right? We'll have to see how to slowly pull it back. And of course, today, it's the fifth phase of elections. I hope you people have gone and you have voted. Look, I voted last month on 19th, and I'm done with my elections. I hope you people have voted. That 2 more phases. Please go and vote, because unless we vote, our democracy, will be found wanting. Okay. Now, the next thing. Let me turn to something else. We all know that China is trying to export its EVs and solar cells and all that, and it has had a tremendous overcapacity on these, and they're trying to export it and flood European markets and American markets. And America ने क्या है, tariff बढ़ा दिया, 100% tariff. Okay, so the cheap Chinese cars are no more cheap. Okay, they are now at par with American cars, and now that will be a problem for China, because what will China do with its overcapacity, right? People say, okay, you can sell it to Africa and all that, but that I'll talk at the end of this thing as to what that means. But now, following America, Canada is also planning to raise the tariffs. And America, what it has done, It has also told Mexico, okay, any plant which is set up with sourcing from China, the tariffs will be the same. So then America has played NAFTA very well. And USA is very clear. It will not allow China to dump cheap EVs or solar panels in USA. Now, if that happens, EU will also follow suit to some extent. In which case, what happens to the excess capacity of EVs with China? China has pumped its GDP by excess production. Who will buy it? Because internally they can't buy it. But that is an analysis. Towards the end of this show, I'll get back to it in detail. Okay. Next point. ये देखिए housing. Housing continues to be a problem. What people don't understand and what people just loosely talk of is housing is 30% of a $22 trillion economy, which is 6.6 trillion USD. Every year चाइना में ये एक घाटा हो रहा है. अगर हर साल का जीडीपी 22-25 ट्रिलियन डॉलर है, राइट, सो एवरी ईयर एक घाटा है दिस प्रॉपर्टी सेक्टर में. अब मान लो हम बोलते हैं कि 13 ट्रिलियन ही है इसका इकोनॉमी, फिर भी 4 ट्रिलियन 5 ट्रिलियन यूएस डॉलर का घाटा है यूएस में. सो ये एक सीरीज ऑफ आर्टिकल्स आए हैं पिछले 4 हफ्ते में. Says China's falling property investment drags April economic activities, adds to call for bigger policy action. अप्रैल में तो इसने चाइना का इकोनॉमी को नीचे कर दिया. अच्छा, तुरंत उसके बाद क्या किया है? China has recently launched a 41 billion, stimulus package. What are they going to do in this? Right? They're going to buy unsold homes back from private property developers. They're going to repurchase idle land, and they're also going to they have also reduced the mortgage rates. So तीन चीजें की इन्होंने. $41 billion. Okay, $41 billion में इन्होंने क्या किया है? जो घर खाली पड़े हैं वो खरीद रहे हैं, जो घर अभी बना नहीं उसको बनाने के लिए पैसा दे रहे हैं, चीप लोन्स दे रहे हैं, मॉर्गेज दे रहे हैं लोगों को कि भाई आप सस्ते में जाके घर खरीदो, ठीक. और जो लैंड आइडल पड़ा है विद द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट उसको वापस खरीद रहे हैं. और ये पूरा पैसा जो है वो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स को दे रहे हैं, राइट, लोकल प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट्स को. ये सब आप कीजिए. So this is a major step which China has taken. क्या इसमें फल आएगा वो देखने वाली बात है. देखिए, वापस जाएंगे पिछले इसमें क्या है. इसका $6 ट्रिलियन है ये प्रॉपर्टी मार्केट, और इसमें 41 बिलियन इन्होंने बेल आउट किया है. विल इट बी इनफ? राइट, एंड दैट्स देयर प्रॉब्लम. ये कैक्सन ग्लोबल का है, ये भी इनफैक्ट कैक्सन, या दिस फ्रॉम Ikai Global. What does Ikai Global say about this whole story? He says, right, and this is a cover story, okay? He says, will China's latest policy call to arms turn the ailing property market around? So they have doubts. Yeah, is this $41 billion which is being put, will it turn the property market around? A lot of questions are there on this, right? So, but then this is the first step which China has taken to sort out its property market, right? Because one thing they have realized कि भाई बिना property market का revival से China का economy डूबेगा. I mean, it will not come out because EVs के ऊपर tariff लग गया, solar cells के ऊपर भी tariff लग जाएगा. So your exports are not going to go up. If your exports are not going to go up, internal consumption in China was mostly through property. If property doesn't go up, then what? People will just not, keep buying gold and keep money in banks. If they keep money in the banks, what happens? I'll tell you a little later. Okay. Next, of course, again, this is from South China Morning Post. He says China property Beijing stimulus plans needs more time, money and policy support. तीनों बोल रहा है ऑलरेडी विद इन 3 days वो बोल रहे हैं कि भाई इसके लिए वक्त चाहिए, मनी एंड पॉलिसी सपोर्ट चाहिए और ज्यादा पैसा चाहिए, राइट? इट इज अ लॉन्ग स्टैंडिंग हाउसिंग क्राइसिस एंड दिस विल नॉट रन अवे. आप यकीन मानिए, this housing crisis is not running away anywhere. It's going to hound China for at least the next 5 to 10 years. And by then, it might be too late. Okay. Now, same thing. He says China's rush to prop up housing sector aims to boost confidence ahead of third plenum. So this is a new thing which came out yesterday in South China Morning Post. The third plenum is to be held in July. So by the time the third plenum comes, after all, and this third plenum is being held after a gap of 8 months. So what is Xi Jinping and company trying to do? By the time the economic plenum is held, they said we'll put this $41 billion. They'll spin a web कि हम ये करेंगे, ये प्रॉपर्टी सेक्टर वापस आएगा, ये प्रॉपर्टी सेक्टर वापस आ जाएगा, तो क्या है कि हमारा इकोनॉमी वापस इज ऑन टॉप. दिस इज द स्टोरी दे आर स्पिनिंग. इट्स वेरी क्लियर. ये जो आर्टिकल कल आया, उस जैसे मैंने इसको पढ़ा मेरे को क्लियर हो गया कि दिस इज व्हाट चाइना इज ट्राइंग, राइट? या सी, अगर आप $41 बिलियन आप डुबोगे इस सेक्टर के अंदर, सो कुछ तो फर्क आएगा ना. देयर विल बी सम मूवमेंट, यू नो, एंड दैट दे विल ग्लोरीफाई इट. And by the time the third plenum comes, July, we'll see. I will do this analysis of the third plenum in July because that's going to catch everyone's imagination. Okay? So this is what China is up to. The trick क्या है? अभी कर दो पैसा. उन्होंने economic plenum को, they've announced it. So put this thing, get some, pump prime it, and hopefully make things look rosy and get over the plenum. It's very clear. So what are they doing? They're actually fooling their public. That's the fundamental thing. And then, agriculture minister, he had some problems or some issues. Okay, this I saw from Kexen Global, right? He did some advice. कहता है, China agriculture minister adds to China's growing chorus of concern for food security. He did some thing to say, look, there's a problem in the food security of China and all that. He's the agriculture minister. So what has happened to him? Bas, thank you. Kexen says, China's minister of agriculture invested for corruption. He's off. Right? He's not the only one. China में अभी एक नया round of purges शुरू हो गया. उसमें क्या है? Kexen Global comes out with all this. He says, to Chem China ex-leaders during Syngenta deal hit with corruption probe. Chem China is their chemical sector. So there also 2 guys have gone. Okay. Former Chinese banker likely probe for revolving door corruption, sources say. So one more banker has gone. He's not the only one. Look at this. Dozens of China's state regulators, bankers, financial bosses in corruption net as crackdown stepped up in New Year. So in the past 4 months, so things have moved. Yeah, इनका जो जी जिनपिंग जी अपना चला रहा है, अपना करप्शन पूरा हटाने के चक्कर में है, यानी कि इसका पर्जिंग कर रहा है, वो जारी है. So then, if this is what his story is, now he wants to make China a superpower. What does he say? China's Xi Jinping lays out roadmap for becoming financial superpower, but warns risk can throw effort off track. Okay, so he's warned that the effort might be thrown off track. It will surely be thrown off track. But he wants to make it a superpower. How is he making it a superpower? By carrying out purges, by having the third plenum, by stimulus, everything, right? He is selling uh, a fake story to China. And that is very clear now. Okay. Have a look at this. In one of those articles, ये बोला है that when the projects go sour, the loans become bad debts to be absorbed by banks. This is not the property thing. So if a property project has gone bad, it's the banks who have to hold the whole thing, right? And banks are the ones who have to absorb the losses finally. But the bank loans are actually the people's hard-earned savings because savings today in China is very high. People are putting money. If they're not buying property, they can either buy gold or they put it in the bank. And they put it in the bank, and the bank is already committed to those bad loans, and the bad loans are getting sorted out. The Chinese banks are going to come out, looking nice, पर लोग गरीब होते जा ये मैं बार बार बता के आ रहा हूँ कि जो भी हो रहा है चाइना के अंदर कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी रहेगा कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी विल सर्वाइव it will I have no doubt it will not fall. China will not collapse, but the Chinese people are going to go poorer and poorer. He says that look at it again, but the bank loans are actually the people's hard-earned savings. So the losses because of financial corruption are actually like stealing from the public. So this we should be very clear. That's what's happening in China. So at the end of the day, all this bad debt, good debt, everything in China will be squared off. It is the Chinese people who are going to be poorer. So are you going to see a progressive China? So all those things about high GDP, all that is fake. Let's be very clear. You're going to see a poorer China going ahead. Well, you think I am the only one who says it? Look at this analysis which has come out. He says China is at risk of far more serious recession than Japan 30 years ago. He's an economist. There's an interview it's an exclusive interview in South China Morning Post. I mean, it's a fantastic interview and his view. So there's a recession on in China. And something which people don't agree. When people said the property market is going down, people say, nay, they'll get over it. But the property is a big problem. Same way, there's a recession on in China. No one wants to acknowledge it. Why people don't want to acknowledge it? We have to understand. If a recession is acknowledged in China, all those people who have invested in China will lose their money. The stocks will go down. Everything will go down. If that happens, there'll be a collapse. Where they're stuck. Actually, the West is stuck with China. So they will never agree that China is in a recession. But actually, it is so. So what does he say? The main things I want to put across to you people. He says China is facing a combination of stagnation and a shrinking, aging population. Both. Why is this recession happening? Stagnation and aging population. So for the first time, analysts are now talking of the effects of aging population. Just think what will happen as we go along. When the population drop starts manifesting itself and people are going to get aged, then you will cut back to my analysis where I have constantly said that in the next 4 to 5 years, we'll find a different China. China's window of opportunity is closing. And I've said this long back. He says the developed world is in high inflation, which is there. There's tremendously high inflation in USA. And people are worried that about the financial risks of USA at this point of time. Right? And so is inflation rampant in Europe. It's only in our country which we don't have, but that's just pure luck. Okay. He says China consumer prices have been rising by less than 1% for more than 1 year. When everyone else is in inflation, China is not. It's stuck. It's stagnated. Just finished. Okay, then he's compared it with Japan. He says Japan's population was still increasing when the bubble burst. What is this bubble? They also had a property bubble 30 years back. But that was at a time when the population was increasing. He says China population decline and the bursting of the bubble started at the same time. So China is actually facing a double whammy. एक तरह पॉपुलेशन गिर रहा है और प्रॉपर्टी का गुब्बारा फट गया. Okay, Chinese situation is far more serious than that of Japan 30 years ago. This is a guy whom they are consulting to help them out. Because he was consulted by Japan, he was even consulted by USA, Richard Koo. You can go to that article, you go type this in, right? Sorry. You type this in and you'll get the answer in South China Morning Post. Or otherwise also, you just type it in any browser, you'll get this article. Read it. It's an interview. It's very good. Okay. Right. Then he goes on to say, he says, foreign markets are not as open as before. The US, Europe, and Japan, or the West as it is popularly known, is 56% of the global GDP combined together, with a per capita GDP of 60,000 per head, per capita GDP. Each man in the West, his GDP is $60,000. Now, India, Russia, Africa, and Latin America represent 26% of the global GDP. Okay, with per capita GDP of only 13,000. So it's like 1/5 of the West. So the purchasing capacity in the West is far higher than the other countries or in the global South. So what he says is 56 of the global market is not going to be open as before. Get back to that first slide which I spoke, where the EV tariffs have come in. They're not going to allow all these Chinese, EVs to flood their markets. So that's getting close. So China has to rely on this 26%. That is India, Russia, and Africa and Latin America. Can it do so? Will that turn China around? And India, anyway, we are not allowing it. So is 26% may or be घटा दो. Okay? Thus 26% could be 20%. So China has got only 20% of the global market, and that too, how much can they absorb? Can a person in Africa, where there's a famine, afford a electronic vehicle or an electric vehicle, whatever you call it? Very difficult. Then he says other countries are waiting. Which are these countries? Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, India, and Bangladesh. They are making themselves more attractive so that factories will move there, including Chinese ones. So they are increasing their market share of manufacturing. If all these countries are increasing their share of manufacturing, and the West is looking at them after the COVID and the China experience, how can China sell? If China doesn't sell, its economy is not going to go up. That's the point that this man is saying. And if its economy doesn't go up, then there's a problem. We'll talk of that. Back then, China was the only game in town, not anymore. There are other games in town which are coming up. It'll take time. 5-6 saal lagega. It'll take time. I have no doubt about it. Okay. And then this is not the only thing that is happening in China. Look at this headline. He says how China's latest government overall is shaping up and what it says about the Communist Party's priorities. Very interesting article this. He says new bodies dedicated to issues such as financial risk and social stability are being established at a central and local level. Okay. Then he says Shakeup is seen by some analysts as part of wider move to strengthen the party's control over key policies, areas, and organs of government. So, what is happening in China is control. Xi Jinping and the Communist Party want to control China, right? They might be worried. I mean, I don't know. At what point they'll start getting worried is something we'll have to see. Whether they are losing control over China. I'm talking about this for the first time. Okay, you look at it. आप देखिए इसका ईवीज बिक नहीं रहे, अंदर कोई खरीद नहीं रहा, प्रॉपर्टी को रिवाइव करने के लिए 2 साल के बाद इसने पैसा लगाया, वो भी लोग खुद के लोग बोल रहे हैं कि कम है. People are not consuming, people are saving. So whatever people are saving in the bank is being squared up against bad debts and loans. Where does China go? And then, of course, China will declare another 5% GDP. Don't worry. That I'm very sure. I'm telling you now. They'll say, no, we've exceeded expectations. By July, they will tell this. After all, January, February, March का एक क्वार्टर हुआ, March, April, May का April, May, June का second quarter है. He's planned the plenum in July, first or second week. There he'll say, oh, for the past 6 months, we've grown more than 5% or 6%. We are back. Oh, our property is sorted out. All this nonsense. Why? As people are getting poorer, they have to be told a good story. As people are getting poorer, there is bound to be rebellion. And hence, he's tightening party control. So the internal situation in China is going to be tight. Externally, they're not going to make headway. And in this past 1 week, despite his Gathbandhan with Putin, right, Iran का जो अभी रईसी का जो डेथ है is going to have an impact. We'll discuss that separately. I'll discuss it in another episode. It's going to have an impact. So where does that leave China? So it means if their economy is not going and not doing well, he has to externalize. Does he have another choice? So where will he externalize? Will he externalize against Taiwan? Will he externalize against Philippines, जो आजकल हो रहा है, जिसके बारे में एक very interesting. Actually, the Philippines story is so interesting. It has become from the last time I did it. I'm just waiting. I'll come out with an analysis of mine on what's happening in the Philippines. There's a lot हमारे लिए सीखने के लिए. Will he go against Philippines? He's not able to do it. Right? And or where next? India. So what will he do? 2 साल हो गए. आप इसका टाइमलाइन देखिए. Important. 2017 ये डोकलाम आए. उसके बाद जो हमने रोक लगा दिया उसको वापस चला गया. 3 साल के बाद 2020 में वापस आया. 2.5 साल के बाद एक्चुअली जो भी हुआ गलवान में, माउंट कैलाश में वगैरह वगैरह, फिर थोड़ा स्थगित हो गया. 22 अक्टूबर 2.5 साल के बाद दोबारा यंगजी में ट्राई किया. दैट वाज अ मेजर अटेम्प्ट which we threw him off. वापस कहानी 2-2.5 साल का लगाइए. 2022 से लेकर 2024 अक्टूबर के बाद या sometime towards the end of the summer season he will try. Hopefully by then he will feel that more confident that he'll have to. So my view is that anytime after August, expect a jet up. That's my view. I'd like your views on it and any feedback, and we'll discuss it. So once again, before I finish, मैं बताना चाहता हूँ ये पीक इनटू एवरीडे चाइना हफ्ते भर का न्यूज जो भी चाइना में हुआ है, इंपॉर्टेंट न्यूज मैं आपको दिखाऊंगा. थोड़ा विश्लेषण होगा जिस तरीके से ये छोटा एपिसोड होगा, और आई पुट स्क्रीनशॉट्स आउट। और अगर आप इन डिटेल उस विषय के बारे में देखना चाहते हैं तो वो हेडलाइन आप फीड कीजिए ब्राउजर में, किसी ब्राउजर में आपको आर्टिकल मिल जाएगा, एंड यू कैन गेट लिंक्स देयर आफ्टर। आई एम नॉट पुटिंग सेपरेट लिंक्स। एंड दिस, ये जो मैंने शुरू किया है, ये इज ऑन रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम वन ऑफ यू। ठीक, थैंक्स अ लॉट, गुड इवनिंग एंड जय हिंद।